Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Defiant, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Kepler-7 was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where different species could meet safely. Today, it would be humanity's first real diplomatic meeting with an alien empire. "Sir, we're getting close," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her position at the tactical station. She was young but smart, and Jake trusted her completely. Amy had a way of seeing danger before anyone else did. "Take us in slow," Jake ordered. "Let's not give them any reason to think we're here to fight." The Vexery Empire had been watching Earth for months. Their ships were bigger, and their weapons were stronger than anything humans had built. The aliens had sent a message saying they wanted to talk about trade, but Jake felt something was wrong. The message had been too polite, too careful. Sergeant Pete Davis checked his sidearm for the third time. He was the only Marine on the diplomatic team, but Pete had seen enough action to know when a situation might go bad. The way the Vexery had arranged this meeting felt like a trap. "Commander, I don't like this," Pete said quietly. "Why meet on a station this far from any help? Why not use one of the normal diplomatic posts?" Jake nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. But Earth needed allies, and the Vexery controlled 3-star systems full of resources humanity needed. Sometimes you had to take risks. The Defiant docked with Kepler-7 without problems. The station looked empty, except for a few Vexery ships that were much larger than the human vessel. Jake, Amy, and Pete walked through the airlock, wearing their best uniforms and carrying only basic sidearms. The meeting room was huge and cold. Admiral Zethkar waited for them with 6 other Vexery officers. The aliens were tall and thin with gray skin and forearms. Their eyes were completely black, and they moved like they thought they were better than everyone else. "So these are the humans," Admiral Zethkar said in perfect English. His voice sounded like he was talking to children. "You look exactly as weak as our report suggested." Jake kept his face calm, but Amy shifted slightly behind him. Pete's hand moved closer to his weapon, without seeming to move at all. "Admiral, we're here to discuss trade agreements," Jake said politely. "Earth has many things your empire might find useful." The Vexery Admiral laughed, and it was not a nice sound. "Trade? You think we need anything from your primitive world? Look at you. Your ship is barely capable of space travel. Your weapons are ancient. Your clothes look like they were made by children." The other Vexery officers made similar laughing sounds. They were enjoying this. "We have food crops that grow in difficult conditions," Amy said, stepping forward. "Our medical research has found cures for diseases that might affect your people too." Silence. Admiral Zethkar shouted, "Did anyone give you permission to speak, female?" Amy's eyes went cold, but she didn't say anything. Jake felt his own anger rising, but kept it hidden. Pete was now standing in a way that looked relaxed, but would let him draw his weapon fast. "You humans will learn your place," the Admiral continued. "Your species will serve the Vexery Empire. You will mine minerals for us and grow food for us. In return, we will let you live." "That's not going to happen," Jake said simply. The Admiral stared at him. "Excuse me?" "I said that's not going to happen. We came here to talk about partnership, not slavery." Admiral Zethkar made a gesture with one of his 4 hands. Suddenly, 20 Vexery soldiers appeared from hidden doors around the room. They all carried energy weapons that hummed with power. "You will surrender now," the Admiral said. "Your ship will be taken. You 3 will be examples to show your people what happens when they refuse to obey." Jake looked around the room quickly. Amy was doing the same thing, but she was also watching the soldiers' positions. Pete had his thumbs hooked in his belt, looking casual, but Jake knew the Marine was ready to fight. "Admiral, you're making a mistake," Jake said. "The only mistake." was thinking you primitives deserved a chance to surrender with dignity. What happened next surprised everyone in the room, except the 3 humans. Jake Dove left while pulling a small device from his pocket. Amy rolled right, and somehow had her sidearm out before she hit the ground. Pete threw something that looked like a coin but exploded with blinding light when it hit the wall. The Vexery soldiers started shooting, but they couldn't see anything. Their energy beams went everywhere except where the humans were. Jake's device was jamming their communications, so they couldn't coordinate their attack. Amy shot 2 soldiers before they knew where she was. Pete had somehow gotten behind 3 others and knocked them unconscious with moves that looked impossible. Jake was using an overturned table for cover while working on a small computer device. "Amy, Pete, we need to move," Jake shouted. "Where?" Amy called back while shooting another soldier. "Docking Bay. I'm downloading their navigation data." Admiral Zethkar was screaming orders, but his soldiers couldn't hear him over the noise and confusion. The humans were moving like they had practiced this exact situation 100 times. Pete threw another explosive device that made a hole in the wall. "Exit strategy," he yelled cheerfully. The 3 humans ran through corridors full of confused Vexery. More soldiers appeared, but Amy seemed to know where they would be before they got there. She had memorized the station's layout during their walk to the meeting room. They reached the docking bay as alarms started going off all over the station. A Defiant was already powering up its engines. Jake's crew had been ready for a fast departure. As they ran up the boarding ramp, Pete turned and waved at the pursuing Vexery soldiers. "Thanks for the workout," he called out. "Same time next week?" The Defiant undocked and jumped to faster-than-light speed before the Vexery could react. In the ship's conference room, Jake looked at the data Amy had stolen from the stations. "Computers, well?" Amy asked. "We got their fleet positions, supply routes, and communication codes," Jake said, "plus recordings of everything that happened in that room." Pete was cleaning his equipment. "So just another Tuesday, then?" Jake smiled. "Pretty much. Amy, send this data to Earth Command. Let them know the Vexery aren't interested in peaceful trade." Back on Kepler 7, Admiral Zethkar stared at the empty docking bay. 3 humans had fought their way through 20 armed soldiers and escaped with classified information. They had never seemed scared or desperate. They had been calm and professional, even while fighting for their lives. "Sir," one of his officers said carefully, "should we report this to the Empire?" Admiral Zethkar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Send a message to all fleet commanders. The humans are more dangerous than we thought." "Much more dangerous." The officer looked confused. "Sir, it was only 3 of them against all of us." "That's exactly why they're dangerous," the Admiral replied. 3 humans just made us look like fools. What happens when they send 1,000? Dr. Lisa Park was checking soil samples when she noticed the shadow pass over the sun. It happened too fast and in the wrong direction for any normal weather pattern. She looked up at the sky over New Austin Colony, but saw nothing unusual. Colony was home to 15,000 humans on a planet at the edge of known space. Most people were farmers, miners, or researchers like Lisa. It was supposed to be a quiet place where families could build new lives far from Earth's crowded cities. Lisa walked over to her research partner, Dr. Kevin Walsh, who was studying plant growth near the main agriculture center. "Did you see anything strange in the sky about 10 minutes ago?" Kevin looked up from his tablet. "No, why?" "Wait, actually the birds went quiet around that time. All of them stopped singing at once." That made Lisa nervous. She had studied animal behavior on 12 different worlds, and sudden silence usually meant predators were near. "We should check with colony security." The security office was a small building near the center of town. Captain Tom Brady was the head of colonial defense, a former Earth military officer who had retired to New Austin with his wife and 3 children. Most people thought his job was easy since nothing dangerous ever happened on their peaceful world. "Dr. Park, good to see you," Captain Brady said when Lisa and Kevin arrived. "What can I do for you?" "We think something might be watching the colony," Lisa explained. "The animals are acting strange, and I saw something move across the sky that didn't match any weather pattern." Captain Brady nodded seriously. He had learned to trust Dr. Park's scientific observations. "I'll check our sensors and contact the other settlements. Better safe than sorry." What none of them knew was that 6 alien ships were indeed watching New Austin. The ships belonged to the Krolith hive mind, a collective consciousness that had absorbed 47 different species into its group mind. They had come to study these humans after hearing about the incident at Kepler-7. The Krolith leader, known as Primary Node, was confused by what they observed. The humans seemed to act independently, making their own choices and following their own thoughts. But somehow they also worked together in ways that made no logical sense to a hive mind. "Observe the farming sector," Primary Node commanded the other ships. The humans appear to coordinate their work without central control. "How is this possible?" The Krolith watched as human farmers worked their fields. Each person made different decisions about when to plant, what crops to grow, and how to manage their land. Yet somehow the entire colony had enough food, with some families growing extra to help others who had bad harvests. "There is no central planning authority," reported Secondary Node. "Each human chooses independently, yet the group survives and grows. This defies all biological logic." Primary Node was becoming more interested in this strange species. What about their defense systems? Do they have military coordination? The alien ships scanned the colony's defenses. What they found made no sense at all. There was no central command bunker, no unified command structure, and no apparent military hierarchy. Captain Brady had authority, but most of the colonists had regular jobs and only trained as soldiers part-time. "Their military system is chaos," observed Tertiary Node. "How can they defend themselves without proper organization?" "We will test them," Primary Node decided. "Launch the probe attack. We will see how these chaotic humans respond to threat." The Krolith sent down 12 small attack drones, each one programmed to target different parts of the colony. They expected panic and confusion as the humans tried to figure out who was in charge and what to do. Instead, something impossible happened. Captain Brady was talking to his lieutenant, Sarah Miller, when the first drone appeared over the town square. Before he could give any orders, Sarah was already on her radio calling all security personnel. At the same time, without being told, colonists started moving children toward the safest buildings. "Tom, we've got 12 bogies coming in from different directions," Sarah reported. "The civilians are already heading for cover." Captain Brady grabbed his rifle and ran toward the town center. "How do they know to do that?" "I didn't give any evacuation orders. No idea, but look around. Everyone seems to know what they're supposed to do." It was true. Without any central commands, the colonists were responding like a trained military unit. Parents were getting children to safety. People with medical training were setting up aid stations. Others were grabbing weapons and moving to defensive positions. Dr. Lisa Park found herself helping organize evacuation routes, even though she had never received any military training. It just seemed obvious that people needed to move away from the attack zones and toward the reinforced buildings. "Kevin, take the research data to the secure lab," she told her partner. "I'm going to help coordinate the civilian response." "You don't have authority to coordinate anything," Kevin pointed out. "I know, but someone needs to do it, and I'm here." Lisa was already moving toward a group of confused families. "Everyone, follow me to the community center." It has the thickest walls. Meanwhile, Captain Brady and his security team were engaging the attack drones. The aliens had expected humans to bunch up and fight in large groups, making them easy targets. Instead, the defenders seemed to know instinctively how to spread out and support each other without talking. Sergeant Pete Wilson, who had moved to New Austin after serving on Earth, was amazed by what he was seeing. "Captain, these civilians are fighting like trained soldiers. Look at the Johnson family. They're covering fire for the Martinez group while they move to better positions." "How do they know to do that?" Captain Brady asked while shooting at a drone. "I have no idea, sir, but it's working." The Krolith were watching in growing alarm. Their attack drones were being destroyed, one by humans who seemed to communicate without talking. Individuals made decisions that helped the group, even when those decisions put them in personal danger. Mrs. Chun, an elderly woman who ran the colony's library, shot down a drone with an old hunting rifle. She had positioned herself where she could see 3 different attack routes, even though it put her in danger. When asked why later, she just said it seemed like the right place to be. Young David Kim, barely 18 years old, left his safe hiding spot to carry ammunition to defenders who were running low. He had no military training, but he seemed to know exactly where help was needed most. "This is impossible," Primary Node transmitted to the other Krolith ships. "They have no central coordination, yet they respond as if controlled by a single mind. But they are clearly individuals making independent choices. Perhaps they are a new type of hive mind?" suggested Secondary Node. "No, watch closely. See how that human female chooses to risk herself to save those young ones who are not even related to her. No hive mind would waste resources that way. Yet somehow this individual choice makes their group stronger." The battle lasted only 20 minutes. All 12 attack drones were destroyed, and the humans had suffered only minor injuries. But what terrified the Krolith wasn't the military outcome. It was how the humans had achieved victory. After the fighting ended, the colonists didn't wait for orders to begin cleanup and recovery. People automatically started helping where help was needed. Those with medical skills treated the wounded. Others began repairing damage. Still others started investigating the drone wreckage to learn about their attackers. "We need to leave," Primary Node announced to the other ships. "Now." "But our mission was to study these humans and determine if they pose a threat," Secondary Node protested. "Mission complete. They are the greatest threat we have ever encountered." "How can you say that?" "They are few in number and have primitive technology." Primary Node was silent for a moment before responding. "Because they are individuals who choose to act as a group. They make decisions that hurt themselves but help others, and they do this without being commanded. We have absorbed 47 species, but we have never encountered anything like this. I do not understand. And pray you never have to fight them." Primary Node replied as the Krolith ships jumped away from New Austin. Back on the colony, Dr. Lisa Park was helping analyze the destroyed attack drones when Captain Brady found her. "Lisa, how did you know to organize the evacuation routes? You don't have any emergency management training." Lisa looked up from the alien technology she was studying. "I don't know, Tom. It just felt like what needed to be done." Everyone seemed to understand what their part was. Captain Brady nodded slowly. "That's what I don't understand. We never practiced anything like what happened today. But everyone knew exactly what to do." "Maybe that's just how humans work," Lisa suggested. "We're individuals, but we're also pack animals. When there's danger, we protect the pack." In space, Primary Node was transmitting a priority message to all Krolith colonies. Avoid human space at all costs. Species designation. Impossible threat. Level. Details. Individual consciousness combined with group coordination. Recommendation. Do not engage under any circumstances. The message spread quickly through the galactic network. Other species began to take notice of these strange humans who fought like individuals but worked like a hive mind. The humans themselves didn't know they had done anything unusual. To them, helping each other during danger was just natural behavior. The hegemony of scales had been watching the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were masters of biological warfare, able to create diseases that could destroy entire species in months. Their laboratory ships carried thousands of different plagues, each one designed to target specific genetic weaknesses. Supreme bioengineer Stathkar studied the human genetic samples his agents had collected. Creating a plague for humans should be simple. Their DNA was remarkably similar to dozens of other species the scales had already conquered. The humans have standard carbon-based biology, Stathkar reported to the Hegemony Council. They're immune. Systems are actually weaker than most species we have encountered. This should be our easiest victory yet. The other council members hissed their approval. Battle warfare was clean and efficient. The humans would get sick, their society would collapse, and the scales could move in to claim their worlds without having to fight any battles. Deploy the Red Death, ordered High Commander Veslar. The same plague that destroyed the Corvani Republic. It targets mammalian nervous systems and causes complete social breakdown within weeks. 2 weeks later, Dr. Alex Stone was working late in his laboratory on Mars when the first reports started coming in. The Martian Medical Institute was humanity's primary research facility for dangerous diseases, and Alex was one of their best specialists in unknown pathogens. "Doctor, we have a problem," said his assistant, Dr. Jenny Walsh, as she rushed into the lab with a data tablet. "We're getting reports of a new disease from 12 different colonies. Same symptoms, same progression rate." Alex took the tablet and looked at the data. The disease attacked the human nervous system, causing fever, confusion, and eventually death. What worried him most was how fast it was spreading. "This isn't natural," Alex said after studying the genetic structure of the virus. "Someone designed this specifically to kill humans." Within days, the plague was spreading across human space. The scales watched from their hidden ships, waiting for human civilization to collapse as it had happened with so many other species. But something unexpected started happening. On the colony world of Riverside, the first cases appeared in the high farming community. Instead of panicking, the colonists immediately organized quarantine procedures. Families with sick members isolated themselves voluntarily, even though it meant possible death without outside help. "We can't risk spreading this to the children," said Farmer Bill Johnson as he sealed his family's house. His wife, Mary, was already showing symptoms, but they both agreed that protecting the community was more important than their own survival. The scales expected fear and chaos. Instead, they observed humans making sacrificial choices that seemed to go against all biological survival instincts. On New Geneva Station, Nurse Mary Bell was working 18-hour shifts treating plague victims. She had been exposed to the disease multiple times and knew she would probably get sick eventually, but she kept working anyway. "Why do you continue?" asked Dr. Carl Martinez, one of the few doctors who was still healthy. "You know this disease is fatal in 90% of cases." Mary looked up from the patient she was treating. "Because these people need help. If I stopped working every time something might kill me, I wouldn't be much of a nurse." The scales couldn't understand this behavior. When they had released similar plagues on other species, medical personnel had either fled or died quickly. Societies had collapsed as everyone focused on saving themselves, but humans were doing the opposite. The sicker their communities became, the harder the healthy humans worked to help others. Dr. Alex Stone coordinated research efforts from laboratories across human space. Scientists were sharing data freely, even though it meant revealing closely guarded research secrets to competitors. Dr. Kim on Earth has found something interesting, Alex told his team during a video conference. A virus has a weakness in its protein structure. If we can target that, we might be able to create a treatment. What do you need from us? Asked Dr. Susan Chun from the Lunar Research Station. Everything you have on protein synthesis. Also, I need volunteers for testing. Experimental treatments. I'll volunteer, said Dr. Chun immediately. Susan, you're not even infected yet, Alex protested. Not yet, but I probably will be soon. Besides, someone needs to test the treatments, and we can't wait for proper clinical trials. This was another thing the Scales hadn't expected. Humans were volunteering to test dangerous experimental treatments on themselves to help develop cures faster. Supreme bioengineer Stathkar watched the reports with growing confusion. The plague is working exactly as designed. Human mortality rates are as predicted. But their society is becoming more organized, not less. How is this possible? Asked High Commander V. Cesalar. I do not understand it myself. When facing extinction, most species become selfish and desperate. These humans are becoming more cooperative. On the research station Olympus, Dr. Rachel Williams was dying of the plague. She had been infected 3 weeks ago while treating patients, and the disease was now attacking her nervous system. She should have been delirious and useless. Instead, she was still working. Rachel, you need to rest, Dr. Alex Stone told her during their daily research call. You can barely speak clearly anymore. I can still think, Rachel replied, her words slurred but determined. And I'm experiencing the disease firsthand. That gives me data you healthy researchers don't have. Rachel had been documenting every stage of her illness, providing detailed notes about symptoms and progression that helped researchers understand how the plague worked. Even as she was dying, she was contributing to the effort to save others. The fever spikes happen every 6 hours, she reported. But there's a 30-minute window after each spike when mental clarity improves. That might be when treatments would be most effective. This information helped Dr. Alex Stone's team develop a treatment schedule that was 3 times more effective than their previous attempts. The Scales were starting to realize they had made a serious mistake. The humans are adapting faster than any species we have encountered, reported field observer Saral. Their mortality rate is dropping each week as they improve their treatments. Impossible, hissed Supreme Bioengineer Stathkar. The Red Death has never been defeated. How are they developing resistance so quickly? They are not developing biological resistance. They are developing social resistance. The plague kills individuals, but their communities become stronger. It was true. Human colonies that survived the initial outbreak became models for other settlements. They shared their quarantine procedures, treatment methods, and support systems freely with anyone who needed help. Dr. Alex Stone finally announced a breakthrough after 2 months of non-stop research. We have a treatment that reduces mortality to 15% if administered within the first week of infection. How did you develop it so fast? Asked a reporter during the announcement. We had help from researchers across human space, Alex explained. Also, we had detailed data from patients like Dr. Rachel Williams, who documented their symptoms even while dying. And we had volunteers like Dr. Chun, who tested treatments on themselves to speed up development. What about the people who died during the research process? Alex was quiet for a moment. Many people died to save others. Dr. Williams died 3 days ago, still working on treatment protocols. Nurse Mary Bell died last week after treating over 200 patients. They chose to use their final days helping others instead of just trying to survive. The treatment was distributed freely to all human colonies. Within 3 months, the plague was under control. Humanity had not only survived, but had developed. medical techniques that made them more resistant to future biological attacks. Supreme. Leo engineer Stathkar presented his final report to the Hegemony Council. The operation was a complete failure. The humans not only survived our most deadly plague, but they used it to improve their medical capabilities. How? Demanded High Commander V. Sizzlar. They do not respond to extinction threats the way other species do. When facing death, most species become desperate and selfish. Humans become more cooperative and self-sacrificing. The threat of extinction makes them stronger, not weaker. That makes no biological sense. I agree, but the evidence is clear. We released a plague designed to cause social collapse through fear and desperation. Instead, we created a situation that made human communities more unified and more capable. The Hegemony Council was silent for a long time. Finally, High Commander Vilslar spoke. What is your recommendation? Avoid humanity at all costs. They are not just resistant to our biological weapons. They use our attacks to make themselves stronger. We have not weakened them. We have forced them to become more dangerous. 6 months later, human medical technology had advanced by decades. The research done during the plague crisis led to treatments for dozens of other diseases. Colonies that had survived the outbreak were better organized and more resilient than ever before Dr. Alex Stone stood in his new laboratory, looking at data from the latest medical surveys. The irony is remarkable, he told his assistant doctor, Kevin Park. The aliens tried to destroy us with disease, but they ended up making us healthier. How do you figure that? The Coalition of Supremacy was the largest military alliance the galaxy had ever seen. 6 major powers had joined together for one purpose: to destroy humanity before they became too dangerous. The Coalition commanded 3,000 warships, controlled 50 star systems, and had armies numbering in the billions. Admiral Chris Turner stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable, looking at tactical displays that showed enemy fleets approaching 12 human systems at once. His own fleet had only 200 ships, and most of them were smaller than the alien vessels bearing down on them. Sir, we're getting reports from all sectors, said Lieutenant Commander Sandra Moore, his tactical officer. The enemy is hitting U.S. everywhere at the same time. Chris nodded grimly. The Coalition had planned this well. They were trying to end the war quickly by attacking every major human colony simultaneously. Most military experts across the galaxy predicted humanity would be extinct within 6 months. What's our status? Chris asked. We have 60 ships ready for combat, Sandra reported. The Mars Defense Fleet has 40. Earth Command has another 100, but they're spread across 6 different systems. Captain Dave Wilson, commanding the destroyer Relentless, spoke up from the communication screen. Admiral, my ship is in the Tau Ceti system. We're facing a fleet of 200 enemy vessels. Should we retreat? Chris looked at the tactical display. The smart move would be to withdraw and try to protect the core worlds. But that would mean abandoning millions of colonists to alien occupation. Negative, Captain Wilson. Hold your position and make them fight for every inch of space. Understood, sir. We'll make it expensive for them. This was the beginning of what historians would later call the Long War. It started with humanity vastly outnumbered and outgunned. The Coalition expected a quick victory, followed by the usual pattern: occupation, subjugation, and eventual absorption of human territory into their empires. They had no idea what they were actually starting. The first battles went badly for humanity. Captain Wilson's single destroyer was destroyed after taking out 3 enemy cruisers. The Tau Ceti colony fell after a week of fighting. Similar defeats happened across human space, but something strange began to happen. Instead of getting weaker, human resistance started getting stronger. Colonel Sandra Moore, now commanding ground forces on the occupied world of New Hope, was leading what should have been a hopeless guerrilla campaign. The Coalition had 10,000 troops on the planet. Sandra had fewer than 500 human fighters. "Ma'am, we just lost another supply depot," reported Sergeant Tim Brooks, one of her squad leaders. "The aliens are getting better at finding our hidden bases." Sandra studied the tactical map on her tablet. "And we stop using hidden bases. From now on, we stay mobile. Hit them and disappear before they can respond. That's going to be harder on our people. No safe places to rest or resupply." "I know, but it's better than being predictable. The aliens think like occupying armies, because that's what they are. We need to think like something they've never fought before." Sandra was right. The Coalition forces were used to fighting traditional wars against other organized militaries. They had never dealt with an enemy that adapted their tactics daily, sometimes hourly. 3 months into the war, the human defenders on New Hope had developed completely new ways of fighting. They used the planet's weather patterns to hide their movements. They turned the aliens' own supply convoys into weapons by sabotaging shipments. Most confusing to the Coalition, they convinced some of the alien soldiers to question their orders. "Why are we fighting these humans?" asked a young Coalition soldier to his commander after a particularly brutal battle. "They were just protecting their families." "Because they refuse to surrender," the commander replied. "Once they submit, the fighting will stop." "But sir, they've been fighting for months, and they're getting better at it, not worse." "What if they never surrender?" The commander had no answer for that question. In every previous war, defeated enemies eventually gave up when the cost became too high. But humans seemed to get more determined the longer the fighting continued. Captain Dave Wilson, whose destroyer had been destroyed in the first week, was now commanding a captured alien cruiser with a crew of human volunteers. His ship, renamed Payback, had become legendary for appearing where Coalition forces least expected it. "Captain, we've got intelligence about an enemy supply convoy," reported Chief Engineer Amy Foster, who had learned to operate alien technology through trial and error. 3 freighters with minimal escort, carrying ammunition to their forces on Kepler Prime. "How minimal?" Dave asked. 2 escort destroyers. Should be easy prey." Dave smiled. "Should be, but let's make sure. We'll hit them from 3 directions and make it look like we have a whole squadron." This was another thing the Coalition hadn't expected. Humans took equipment from defeated enemies and learned to use it better than the original owners. They modified alien weapons, improved alien ship designs, and somehow made captured technology work more efficiently. The war dragged on for a year, then 2 years. Coalition leaders who had expected a quick victory found themselves dealing with an enemy that became more dangerous every month. "The humans are not following any known pattern of warfare," reported General Kethfer to the Coalition Command Council. "They should be weakening after 2 years of constant fighting. Instead, they are developing new tactics and technologies." "Impossible," said Supreme Commander Zolther. "No species can maintain fighting effectiveness for this long without external support. I have reviewed the data multiple times. The humans are not receiving support from any external source. They are creating new capabilities from their own resources." Admiral Chris Turner was reviewing casualty reports when Lieutenant Commander Sandra Moore brought him the latest intelligence. She had been promoted twice during the war and was now his chief of staff. "Chris, you need to see this," Sandra said, using his first name as she always did when they were alone. 2 years of war had made formal protocols seem less important than personal connections. "Good news or bad news?" Chris asked. "Both. We've lost another colony ship, but we've also captured an entire Coalition supply depot." And Dave Wilson reports that his raiding squadron has destroyed 15 enemy ships this month. Chris looked at the strategic display. The war was far from over, but humanity was no longer just surviving. They were actually winning battles and taking territory. How? Many ships does Dave have now? 12, all captured from the enemy and modified with human improvements. He's calling his group the Ghost Fleet because they appear and disappear so fast. The coalition was beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. The war they thought would last 6 months was now in its 3rd year, and humanity was getting stronger. Sir, we need to consider peace negotiations, General Kethvar told Supreme Commander Zalthar. Our casualties are increasing while theirs are decreasing. They are learning faster than we can adapt. Peace? With a primitive species that barely had space travel 3 years ago? That primitive species has destroyed 400 of our ships and liberated 6 occupied worlds. They have also convinced 12 neutral species to join their side. If this continues, we will lose everything. Supreme Commander Zalthar was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked, "What makes them so dangerous?" They do not fight the way other species fight. Most armies get tired and want peace after suffering heavy losses. Human armies get angry and fight harder. Their soldiers volunteer for suicide missions, not because they are ordered to, but because they want revenge for their fallen comrades. That cannot be sustained indefinitely. Respectfully, sir, they have been sustaining it for 3 years and show no signs of stopping. If anything, they are becoming more efficient at warfare. The truth was that humanity had been transformed by the long war. Every defeat taught them new lessons. Every victory gave them confidence. Most importantly, they had learned to see the war not as something to survive, but as something to win. Colonel Sandra Moore, now commanding the liberation of her 4th occupied world, received a message from Phi. Admiral Chris Turner. The coalition was requesting a ceasefire to discuss peace terms. What do you think? Chris asked during their secure communication. Sandra looked around at her troops, a mix of human soldiers and alien volunteers who had joined their cause. I think they're finally realizing what we knew from the beginning, which is that this isn't just a war for territory or resources. This is a war about who gets to decide how the galaxy works. And humans don't give up on things that matter. The message went out to all human forces. The coalition wanted to negotiate. But after 3 years of learning how to fight and win, humanity was no longer the desperate underdog they had been at the war's beginning. They were now the most experienced and effective military force in the galaxy. And everyone knew it. Captain Dave Wilson, whose Ghost Fleet now numbered 30 ships, sent his response to the coalition's peace overture. We'll talk. But we're keeping all the territory we've liberated, all the technology we've captured, and all the allies we've gained. If you want peace, you're going to have to accept a galaxy where humans are equals, not subjects. The peace conference was held on Haven, a neutral world that had remained independent throughout the long war. Ambassador Carol White walked into the massive conference hall, followed by her small team of human diplomats. They looked calm and professional, but everyone in the room knew these were representatives of the galaxy's most dangerous species. Across the table sat the leaders of the Coalition of Supremacy, the same beings who 3 years ago had been confident they could destroy humanity in 6 months. Now they looked tired and worried. Supreme Commander Zalthar couldn't meet Carol's eyes when she sat down. "Thank you all for coming," Carol said politely. "I hope we can find a peaceful solution that works for everyone." General Kethvar leaned forward. "Ambassador White, let us be direct. Your species has proven more capable than we anticipated. We are prepared to offer you membership in the galactic community." "That's generous," Carol replied. "What would that membership include?" "Protection from other hostile species, access to galactic trade networks, and a voice in regional decisions affecting your space." Carol smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "General, I think you misunderstand our position. We're not asking. To join your community. We're offering you the chance to join ours. The coalition leaders looked confused. Supreme Commander Zolther spoke up. Ambassador, perhaps the war has given you an inflated sense of your capabilities. You represent one species. We represent 6 major civilizations. You represent 6 civilizations that just spent 3 years losing a war to one species that barely had space travel when you attacked us, Carol pointed out. But I'm not here to argue about who won or lost. I'm here to talk about the future. Behind Carol, Captain Dave Wilson sat quietly. His uniform was simple, but everyone in the room knew he commanded the Ghost Fleet 30 ships that had become legends throughout the galaxy. Next to him, Colonel Sandra Moore wore the insignia of the Human Liberation Forces that had freed 8 occupied worlds. What kind of future? Asked Coalition Counselor Vextos. Carol activated a holographic display. That showed a map of the galaxy. A future where species work together instead of trying to conquer each other. A future where problems are solved through cooperation instead of warfare. Impossible, said General Kethver. Species are naturally competitive. The strong rule. The weak. This has been the way of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Maybe it's time for a new way, Carol suggested. Look what we accomplished during the war. Human technology improved because we had to adapt. Coalition technology improved because you were competing with us. Neutral species developed better defenses because they were afraid of getting caught in the middle. She touched a control, and the display changed to show technological advancement charts. War forced everyone to innovate faster than they had in centuries. Imagine what we could accomplish if we applied that same energy to exploration and discovery, instead of destruction. Supreme Commander Zolther laughed bitterly. You speak of cooperation, but your fleets destroyed hundreds of our ships. Your soldiers killed thousands of our people. Only after you attacked us, Carol replied calmly. We never started a fight with anyone, but we finished them. The room went quiet. Everyone understood the message. Humanity would defend itself against any threat, but they preferred not to fight at all. Captain Dave Wilson spoke for the first time. Commander Zolther, my ships captured a lot of your people during the war. Do you know what happened to those prisoners? I assume they were tortured for information or enslaved. They were treated according to human standards for prisoners of war. They were given medical care, adequate food, and protection from harm. Many of them chose to stay with us after the fighting ended. This was true. Coalition soldiers who had been captured by humans often refused repatriation, preferring to remain in human space rather than return to their own militaries. Why would they do that? Asked Counselor Vexed OS. Colonel Sandra Moore answered. Because they discovered that humans don't treat former enemies as permanent threats. We treat them as potential friends. Carol nodded. That's what I'm offering today. Not surrender, not domination, but partnership. The war is over. We won, but instead of demanding tribute or territory, we want to build something new. She changed the display again, showing plans for joint exploration missions, shared research projects, and combined colonization efforts. The galaxy is huge. There are thousands of unexplored systems, countless mysteries to solve, and probably other intelligent species we haven't met yet. We could spend the next 1,000 years discovering new things instead of fighting over old territories. General Kethver studied the plans. You seriously propose that former enemies work together on these projects? Why not? Your people are good at large-scale engineering. Ours are good at adapting to new environments. Coalition species have advanced energy technology. Humans have proven we can learn and improve quickly. Together, we could accomplish things none of us could do alone. Supreme Commander Zolther was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, what guarantee do we have that humans won't use this cooperation to gain military advantages. Carol looked directly at him. The same guarantee you're giving us. We're all taking a risk by choosing trust over fear. But the alternative is spending the next century preparing for the next war. And if conflicts arise between our species, then we solve them the way civilized beings should, through discussion, negotiation, and compromise. If that fails, we set up neutral arbitration. Violence becomes the last option, not the first one. Captain Dave Wilson added, "Commander, in 3 years of war, humans captured over 1,000 of your people. We also worked alongside dozens of species that chose our side over yours. Ask any of them how we treat allies compared to how you treated subjects." This was a point that couldn't be argued. During the war, 12 species had switched sides to join humanity, drawn by the human approach to cooperation rather than domination. Counselor Vextos leaned back in his chair. "What you're proposing would require fundamental changes in how galactic civilization operates." "Yes, it would," Carl agreed. "Instead of a few powerful species controlling everyone else, we'd have genuine cooperation between equals. Instead of expansion through conquest, we'd explore together. Instead of competition for resources, we'd develop new technologies that benefit everyone. This has never been attempted on a galactic scale. Most good ideas haven't been tried before," Carol pointed out. "That's what makes them good ideas." The negotiations continued for 3 days. The coalition leaders struggled with the concept of voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. They were used to a galaxy where strength meant the right to rule others, but they also couldn't ignore the evidence. Humanity had proven they were too dangerous to conquer and too valuable to ignore. The choice was between endless conflict or unprecedented cooperation. On the final day, Supreme Commander Zalthar asked the question that had been troubling him. "Ambassador White, what makes you think humans can be trusted with this kind of influence? Power corrupts. If humans become the dominant species, won't they eventually become conquerors like everyone else?" Carol was ready for this question. "Commander, humans have been the dominant species on our own planet for thousands of years. We've had countless opportunities to unite under single rulers or empires. But we keep choosing diversity over unity, freedom over control. We seem to prefer the chaos of independent cooperation to the simplicity of authoritarian order. That doesn't seem efficient." "It's not efficient," Carol admitted, "but it's resilient. When one human group fails, others continue. When one approach doesn't work, someone tries a different way. We've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." Colonel Sandra Moore spoke up. "The same thing happened during the war. We didn't win because we had one brilliant strategy. We won because we had thousands of people trying different approaches and sharing what worked." The final agreement was signed on the 4th day. The Terran Alliance was officially established, with humanity as the founding member and the former coalition species as voluntary partners. The agreement included shared exploration rights, joint research projects, and a council where all species had equal votes regardless of size or power. But the most important part of the agreement was the principles it established. Force was no longer the primary method of resolving disputes. Cooperation was valued over competition. Former enemies were treated as potential friends. 6 months later, the first joint exploration mission launched toward the galactic rim. The crew included humans, former coalition members, and representatives from neutral species who had decided to join the alliance. Ambassador Carol White watched the ships depart from the observation deck of Harmony Station, the new alliance headquarters. Next to her, Captain Dave Wilson was reviewing plans for the exploration fleet's protection detail. "Do you think it will work?" Dave asked. "This whole cooperation experiment?" Carol smiled. "Dave, 3 years ago, 6 major powers tried to destroy U.S. in 6 months. Today, those same powers are sending their best people to explore unknown space alongside our crews. If that's not proof that impossible things can happen, I don't know what is. What if we run into hostile species out there? Other civilizations that don't want to cooperate? The Peace Conference Hall on Haven was the largest diplomatic facility in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive room, but all eyes were focused on one small group of humans sitting at the central table. Ambassador. Carol White looked calm and professional, but everyone present knew they were facing the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Supreme Commander Zolther of the Coalition of Supremacy sat across from Carol, trying to maintain his dignity. 3 years ago, he had commanded the largest military force in galactic history. Today, he was here to surrender to a species that had barely achieved spaceflight when his forces first attacked them. Let me be clear about our position, Carol began, her voice steady and polite. The war is over. We won. But we're not here to dictate terms or demand tribute. We're here to build something better. General Kethvar, who had lost more battles to humans than any military leader in recorded history, leaned forward. What do you mean by better, Ambassador? Carol activated a holographic display showing a map of known space. I mean a galaxy where species cooperate instead of conquering each other, where we explore the unknown together instead of fighting over the known. Coalition Counselor Vextos laughed nervously. That's impossible. Competition and conquest have been the natural order for 10,000 years. The strong rule the weak. This is how civilizations develop. Maybe it's time for a new way of doing things, Carol suggested. She changed the display to show technological advancement charts from the past 3 years. Look what happened during our war. Everyone advanced, faster than they had in centuries, because they had to innovate or die. Captain Dave Wilson, who commanded the legendary Ghost Fleet, spoke quietly from his seat behind Carol. Imagine what we could accomplish if we applied that same energy to discovery instead of destruction. Supreme Commander Zolther studied the data with growing amazement. Every species involved in the conflict had made remarkable technological breakthroughs. You're suggesting we can maintain this rate of progress without warfare? Why not? Carol asked. The galaxy is enormous. There are thousands of unexplored star systems, countless scientific mysteries, and probably other intelligent species we haven't met yet. We could spend the next millennium discovering new things instead of fighting over old territories. Colonel Sandra Moore, who had liberated 8 occupied worlds during the war, added her perspective. Commander, during the fighting, we worked with dozens of different species. Humans are good at adapting quickly, but other species have different strengths. Your people excel at large-scale engineering. The Visceri have advanced energy manipulation. The Krolith understand biological systems better than anyone. Working together, we accomplish things none of us could do alone, Carl continued. We're proposing to make that cooperation permanent and peaceful. General Kethvar looked skeptical. What guarantee do we have that humans won't use this cooperation to gain military advantages? Your species has proven remarkably good at turning any situation into a weapon, Carl smiled. The same guarantee you're offering us mutual trust, backed by mutual benefit. If we're all working together and sharing discoveries, no one gains a permanent advantage over anyone else. And if conflicts arise between our species, then we solve them like civilized beings. Discussion, negotiation, compromise. We establish neutral arbitration systems. Violence becomes the last option, not the first one. Supreme Commander Zolther was quiet for a long moment. Ambassador, your species just spent 3 years proving you're the most effective warriors in the galaxy. Now you're asking us to trust that you won't use that ability to dominate us. Commander, in 3 years of war, humans captured thousands of your people. We could have executed them, enslaved them, or tortured them for information. Instead, we treated them well enough that many chose to stay with us rather than return home. That should tell you something about how we deal with former enemies. This was true, and everyone in the room knew it. Coalition prisoners of war had been treated according to human standards, which were far more humane than what most species expected from their captors. Captain Dave Wilson spoke up. We also worked alongside 12 species that switched sides during the war. Ask any of them how we treat allies compared to how the Coalition treated subjects. Counselor Vextos looked uncomfortable. The Coalition's approach had been based on dominance and fear. Species joined them because they had no choice, not because they wanted to. What exactly are you proposing? Asked General Kethve R. Carroll changed. The display to show detailed plans for joint exploration missions, shared research facilities, and combined colonization efforts. A Terran alliance. A voluntary partnership where all member species have equal votes regardless of size or military power. Equal votes? Supreme Commander Zolther seemed shocked. Your species could demand anything after winning this war. Why would you give up that advantage? Because dominance through fear isn't sustainable, Carroll explained. Eventually, dominated species rebel or find ways to resist. Cooperation through mutual benefit lasts longer and produces better results. Colonel Sandra Moore added, "We learned this during the war. The Coalition forces fought because they were ordered to. Our allies fought because they chose to. Which group do you think was more effective?" The Coalition leaders couldn't argue with that. Species that had voluntarily joined humanity had fought harder and more creatively than Coalition troops who were simply following orders. "There's something else," Carroll said, calling up new data. "Our intelligence suggests there are other civilizations beyond the galactic rim. Some of them might be peaceful, but others might not be. If we're going to explore those regions, we'll need the combined capabilities of multiple species." This revelation caused murmurs throughout the hall. The known galaxy was vast, but the possibility of encountering other major civilizations changed everything. "You're talking about fundamental changes to galactic civilization," observed Counselor Vextos. "Yes, we are," Carroll agreed. "Instead of a few powerful species controlling everyone else, we'd have genuine cooperation between equals. Instead of expansion through conquest, we'd explore together. Instead of hoarding resources and technology, we'd share discoveries that benefit everyone." Captain Dave Wilson leaned forward. "The alternative's simple. We can keep fighting each other for the next 1,000 years while the galaxy stagnates. Or we can work together and see what's possible when intelligent species actually cooperate." Supreme Commander Zolther asked the question that had been troubling him. "What makes you think humans can be trusted with this kind of influence? Power has always corrupted those who hold it." Carroll was ready for this. "Commander, humans have been the dominant species on our own planet for thousands of years. We've had countless opportunities to unite under single rulers or empires. But we keep choosing independence over control, diversity over uniformity. That seems inefficient." "It is inefficient," Carroll admitted, "but it's also resilient. When one human group fails, others continue. When one approach doesn't work, someone tries something different. We've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." "The same principle applies here," added Colonel Sandra Moore. "We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it alongside partners who bring different skills and perspectives." The negotiations continued for a week. Coalition leaders struggled with the concept of voluntary cooperation rather than enforced submission. They were used to a galaxy where military strength meant the right to rule others, but they also couldn't ignore reality. Humanity had proven they were too dangerous to conquer and too valuable as allies to ignore. The choice was between endless conflict or unprecedented cooperation. On the final day, the Terran Alliance Accords were signed. The former coalition of supremacy became the founding partners of a new type of galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had remained neutral during the war watched as humanity did something unprecedented. They chose to build rather than conquer after achieving total victory. 6 months later, the first joint exploration fleet launched toward the galactic rim. Ships from 8 different species flew together under the Alliance banner, carrying crews that represented the best minds and capabilities each civilization had to offer. Ambassador Carol White watched the launch from Harmony Station, the new Alliance headquarters built in neutral space. Next to her, Captain Dave Wilson was reviewing security protocols for the exploration mission. "Do you think it will work?" Dave asked. "This whole cooperation experiment?" Carol smiled as she watched the ships disappear into hyperspace. "Dave, 3 years ago, the most powerful military alliance in galactic history tried to destroy us in 6 months. Today, those same species are sending their finest people to explore unknown space alongside our crews. If that's not proof that impossible things can happen, I don't know what is. What if we encounter hostile civilizations out there?" "Ben will handle them the same way we always have," Carol replied. "We'll try diplomacy first. We'll offer partnership and mutual benefit. We'll show them that cooperation produces better results than conquest. And if they choose violence anyway,